Hi there, it's Linda here. Thanks for joining me today as I play with these goodies for Mudra craft stamps. I'll be creating 3 cards today in my Embossing Extravaganza. Card number 1 is a Christmas card, and I'm using this beautiful Christmas sentiments stamp set from Mudra. So I'm laying my stamp down, just rubbing it to condition it. This is the first time I've ever inked it up, and inking it up with Versamark ink, because I will be gold heat embossing it, as you would have seen in the card example at the beginning. Stamping it down, stamping it a couple of times to make sure I get good coverage. Now I'm using a die just to cut this rectangular piece that will lie on my card front, and adhering it with my tape runner right down into the centre of my card front. Now I'm die cutting my beautiful Christmas sentiment piece, and once it's cut I decide to add a little bit of colour with the R27 Copic marker. So just quickly adding that all around the edge of the beautiful gold embossed oval there, and that just gives it a nice little pop of colour to add a little bit of extra interest to the card. Now I've backed that oval piece with craft foam, which you can see there, and I'm adhering it straight down in the centre of my card. It's a very simple and a very quick card, a smattering of the gorgeous Mudra gold sequins, and card number 1 is finished. On to card number 2, where I have used this small Mudra Pattern It number 2 stamp, and it's got this gorgeous little filigree. Not exactly sure what sort of pattern it is, but it certainly is sweet. So I've decided I'm going to white heat emboss that for an emboss resist effect today. So I've got my card front piece there, and I've worked out where I'm going to stamp the little Pattern It number 2 stamp each time, and I move it across the card front bit by bit. You can see a bit of a dark colour there, that's just from my Versamark pad, but once I put the white embossing powder on the top, it certainly doesn't show up. So it's all heat embossed now, and white on white. It's a bit hard for you to see until I add the glorious Distress Oxide in peacock feathers, and then of course it really does show you where I've just been stamping. Now it's not a perfect piece. You can see there's some gaps there and a few smudges and different things. So as I'm looking at it, I decide that I'm going to cut it down and use just this top part on my card front. So I add a little bit more of the peacock feathers ink to the base of that, and then blend it out lightly at the top. I'll then grab a tissue, and whenever you're doing emboss resist, it's always a good idea just to wipe the excess ink off the embossed sections so that they really stand out. Now I'm going to just do a nice light little bit of ink blending in this area, because this is where my sentiment is going to be. So just using my mini ink blending tool to add some distress ink there in, I think it was Twisted Citron. Now I'm cutting my Celebrate die from that embossed piece, carefully removing the little bits of sticky, and you'll see me with my pokey tool removing the die cut and all the little inside bits. Plus I need these little parts, because you'll see I need them to lay back in when I join my card all together in a minute. So I'm just pulling those up with my pokey tool there, laying them aside. It's a little bit of a fiddly job, but I think it's worth it in the end. Adding lots of tape runner there to that embossed piece and adhering it at the bottom of my card front. Now I decide I'm going to cut my sentiment from this beautiful American Crafts glittered cardstock. So I've used a silver piece and I'm adding lots of the liquid adhesive in tiny little dots to the back of that. And it's time now to adhere back in place all those little die cut pieces that you saw me carefully removing before. So working out where each one goes and then using a small amount of liquid adhesive to adhere them back in place so that that emboss resist pattern is all complete there underneath the inlaid die cut word. I use a smattering of the gorgeous Mudra neon green sequins, and the final touch is an additional part to the sentiment, and I've chosen a happy birthday from the Wishing You stamp set, and I've silver heat embossed that and just cutting it into a little fishtail banner there. And then I adhere it with some foam tape, and card number 2 is finished. Here we go on to card number 3, and for this card I'm using the gorgeous Carnation stamp set from Mudra and colouring with my Zig markers. So I'm going to be cutting out the side of this carnation, so I'm just working out there where I needed to position it on my card front, inking it up with Versamark ink because I am going to be gold heat embossing, and then I grab my Nouveau classic gold embossing powder, which I absolutely love, and brushing off a few little stray excess bits there before I heat it with my heat tool. So I'm colouring my carnation with the purple Zig marker, as I showed you there. First of all, wetting the petals with just nice clean clear water. This is a fine aqua brush, and then the other one I have is a medium point. So I'm just using the fine one to drop in the ink at the base of the petals where I feel the colour would be darker, is what I'm thinking each time when I add the colour. And then I'm using the medium point aqua brush just to drag out that colour so that it's lighter towards the tips of the petals. And I continue that process, moving around one petal after another. The gold heat embossing does help when you're doing this because it keeps the watercolour in its own little section on each petal so that they don't run into each other and affect, you know, one petal affects another. So I do love to heat emboss when I'm watercolouring because that really does help with your process. So it's just a matter of moving your way around from one petal to another. I do try to keep more intense, deeper colour in the centre of the carnation where you imagine all the little petals would sort of be folded in and a little bit darker, and then have them lighter towards the outside. this is what I meant when I said at the beginning that I was cutting off the edge of the carnation. I'm not exactly cutting the carnation itself, but I'm just cutting around its shape there on the side of my card front piece. Close to 1 inch is probably what I'm cutting away, and then just fussy cutting around the leaf and up around the flower head, leaving a little small white border, and then that piece will lie on my card front with a nice piece of chevron black and white striped paper underneath. The major part of my sentiment stamped out now in nice bold VersaFine Onyx black ink, and I'm just adding a few more words to that so that it will say thank you for being there, and the for being there is also from the thanks stamp set. And I'm going to back this piece with a black craft foam for extra dimension and adhere that all to my card front. And it's simply a matter of adding some gorgeous gold Mudra sequins, and my third card is complete.